What is up, guys, and welcome back to another video. So in competitive Fortnite, game sense is involved in everything you do. From deciding which edit to make, to planning out rotations in a stacked scrim game, there's really no getting around the fact that to be an insane player in Fortnite, you have to have solid game sense. That's why, in today's video, I'll be discussing how you can improve your game sense dramatically in Fortnite Chapter 2 Season 7 and future seasons. I'll be going over some of my top recommended methods that you can use, so whether you're trying to grind arena points, place higher in tournaments, or anything else, you can improve your game sense, which is one of the most important skills you can have as a Fortnite player. With that said, if you go on to enjoy this video, be sure to drop a like on it, subscribe if you're new and want to see more content just like this, and without further ado, let's get into the video. So the first thing that I want to discuss in this video is something I haven't really seen any creators talking about, and that's the different types of game sense there are. The thing about game sense is that it's so vast and essentially covers every single thing that you can know in Fortnite. Since game sense has so much depth and so many subcategories, it's important to organize the different types of game sense, that way you can target them a bit more effectively. So with that said, game sense is going to have three categories, which I call mechanical, rotational, and general. Starting with mechanical, this form of game sense basically refers to your fighting game sense. Things like effective edits, the best techniques, or anything else that you're going to use in fights belong in this category. Mechanical game sense really just refers to, well, the mechanical stuff that you do in game and really encompasses the knowledge aspect of fights. Our second form of game sense, rotational, is going to consist of what most of us tend to associate with game sense. Rotational game sense involves things like deciding which fights to take, planning rotation paths, positioning on the map, and things of that nature. Rotational game sense is the most scary one for most players, but I'll be going over some really important ways to improve it in a bit, so stay tuned for that. And finally, our last form of game sense is going to be general game sense. General game sense is really just going to be the general stuff that isn't really encompassed by rotations or mechanics. These include things like knowing the weapon meta, knowing the different map locations, and things like that. Really, general game sense is just your overall knowledge of the game. So with that said, now that we've had a solid introduction to the three forms of game sense, for the remainder of this video, what I'll be doing is essentially just giving you my top methods to improve each category of game sense, and we're going to be starting off with mechanical. So mechanical game sense is a bit of an interesting one, since it's really all about fighting, which most of us kind of do intuitively, and when we're in fights, we really don't think too much while we're doing it. At least that's the case for most players. With that said, learning the most effective techniques and strategies for fights in order to improve your mechanical game sense is really going to come down to learning the most effective techniques, strategies, and really building them to be something intuitive. And honestly, guys, a lot of this is simply going to come from learning new techniques and from gaining fighting experience. I mean, just think about it. When you look at all these pro players, what do they do to practice fighting? To practice fighting, they literally just practice fighting non-stop over and over again. Building up a skill like fighting, getting used to all sorts of situations you can run into, primarily comes down to simply, well, fighting. As well as that, of course, you're going to want to learn and practice new techniques, which is why it's super important to stay up to date with new creative maps and general techniques that come out in the community. But if you focus on practicing techniques on a consistent basis, as well as simply grinding out fights through methods like realistic 1v1s in arena, you should be in a really good spot when it comes to improving your mechanical game sense, and reviewing some of your gameplay as well can give you a really good idea of what to improve for the future. Moving on to the next form of game sense though, which is rotational, and this one is definitely what stumps a lot of players. Understanding advanced things like zone mechanics, how to rotate, when and how to take fights, and all that sort of stuff can definitely seem like a lot for a newer player. Generally, when it comes to rotational game sense, a lot of it is going to come from playing things like tournament matches and potentially scrims, and really just getting a feel for how certain rotations pan out in real games. With rotations and everything involved in this form of game sense, there's really no way to simulate it properly in creative, which is why it's so important to play the actual game to improve your rotational game sense. If you play something like a scrim match or a tournament match, and then you go back into replay mode and VOD review your rotations and kind of get a good understanding of what happened and what you could have done better, and then you do this on a consistent basis with the goal of improving, you should be well on your way to having insane rotational game sense. Another thing I recommend you do for this is to watch a bunch of pro players, especially in things like solo cash cups, and try to figure out how they tend to rotate through different zones, when they're typically going to take fights, when they use their mobility, and things of that nature. Watching pros is such an underrated way to improve your game sense, and especially when it comes to rotations, taking some notes on how pros tend to handle their rotations can give you a massive advantage in your own games. Overall though, by playing scrims and tournament matches on your own, reviewing your games to see what you did right and wrong, as well as watching pros to figure out how they handle different rotations, you should be well on your way to improving this aspect of your game sense. Finally guys, moving on to our final section of this video, and we've got general game sense. General game sense really just refers to all of the general knowledge that you have of Fortnite, from knowing the ins and outs of the map, to understanding the weapons meta and what loadouts to use, and all things of that nature. General game sense really just involves everything else aside from rotations and fighting. To improve your general game sense, your goals should really be to stay ahead of the meta and have enough experience with all sorts of things in game where you kind of just have a good idea for how everything functions. When it comes to staying ahead of the meta, one thing that I mentioned before was watching pro players, which is something I strongly recommend for all three forms of game sense. Whether you're trying to learn techniques to use in fights, figure out how to rotate more effectively, or simply learn about the meta and what the best players are doing in their games, watching pro players is easily one of the best ways you can get better game sense in Fortnite. And just for clarification, when I say watch pro gameplay, I don't mean simply sitting there and watching them play, but rather I mean to actually analyze it and take a good solid look at what they do and why they do it. Sitting back and watching a highlight reel for the fun of it isn't exactly something I'd refer to as practice or learning, and I just wanted to clear that up since a lot of people seem to get confused on that as well. As well as that, when it comes to general game sense, watching tips and tricks videos just like you're watching right now is a great way to do that as well. Whether it's a discussion of a new map location or item, a video about techniques and strategies, or whatever else it may be, a bunch of content creators have great videos on all sorts of different things in game as well, and selecting some of the most relevant videos to watch can really help you gain more overall knowledge about the meta and the game as a whole. But once again guys, similar to watching pros, you don't want to simply just sit back, watch a tips and tricks video and then be done with it. Rather, you want to actually think about how you can implement each tip into your own gameplay and really just focus on using it for improvement rather than solely for entertainment. Finally guys, my last tip to improve your general game sense is one of the simplest yet most effective tips in this video, and that's to simply play the game. I know I say it all the time, but regardless of what you're trying to improve in Fortnite, one of the best ways to improve whatever you're struggling on is to simply play the game more and really put the time and practice in. Whether you're playing arena, competing in tournaments, or simply playing pubs, nothing tops in-game experience as a method to improve your game sense, game knowledge, fighting skill, etc. There's a good reason why so many pros have been grinding arena points non-stop, hitting numbers in literally the hundreds of thousands. Zone rule scrims are becoming less and less popular, people are getting bored of creative, and overall simply grinding out a ton of arena tends to be one of the best up-to-date methods for improvement. With all that said guys, that's going to cover all of your bases when it comes to improving your game sense in Fortnite. Whether you're struggling with mechanical game sense, rotational game sense, general game sense, or a mix of all three, this video should cover all of the most effective methods that you can use to improve your game sense dramatically in Fortnite Chapter 2 Season 7 and future seasons. With that said, be sure to drop a like if this video helped you out, and consider subscribing as well if you want to see more content just like this in the future. As well as that, consider using code Teckoh in the item shop if you'd like to show some extra support. It's 100% free for you and it really does help me out a lot. And finally guys, let me know down in the comments what you'd like to see next on the channel. Tips and tricks ideas are kind of low at the moment, to be honest with you guys, so definitely let me know if there's anything that you'd like to see. With that said, thank you all for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.